Yay.
Yay.
Hey, everybody. I'm super excited to introduce you to Paul Bloom today. He's a professor of psychology. He's a researcher in the areas of morality, of identity, and of pleasure. And he's also an author. And he just finished the book, The Sweet Spot, which is out now, which is amazing. And yeah, Paul, will you give us a quick, how did you get into the studies of identity and understanding pleasure?
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I got into the book because I was interested in certain puzzles of everyday life. So it's not surprising people like food and like sex and like to be loved and good company. But why do we like hot foods and saunas, running marathons, scary movies, BDSM? And your mileage may vary. It's sort of a list of painful things, but everybody likes some stuff that's painful and difficult and hard. And so I was really interested in how this contributes to pleasure. I was going to call my book The Pleasures of Suffering. But the more I looked at it, it got a bit broader. And I started to think about ways in which we choose difficulty and suffering in ways that don't bring us pleasure in any simple sense, but bring us higher goals, like, starting a business or a romantic relationship sometimes, or raising children. Nobody who raises children thinks this is going to be easy. They know it's going to be hard. And they don't even think it's going to be fun in any simple sense, but they think it's going to give their life value. And I began to think about the role that chosen suffering plays in a life worth living.
Well, can you really briefly talk about how I think that this ties into the idea that one can be motivated by different things and different things in the same moment, but also different things over the course of a lifetime?
There's a lot of people, and maybe this was me before I started the book, who thinks, a lot of psychologists, we're just after pleasure. We want to have pleasure. We want to avoid pain. And whenever somebody tells us different, I said, no, I want to do good. I want to make the world a better place. We say, you just want to get the kick, the feeling good you get from doing that. And I've come to believe, for a lot of reasons, that's just wrong. That I'm come to believe something that people call motivational pluralism, which is the idea we want many things. So we do want pleasure. And, it's a really hot day outside. You're all sweaty. Nothing like a cool drink. Yeah, we like that. We also want to be happy. We want to look back at life and say, this is a good life. I'm happy with my life. I'm positive about it. But we also want to be good. I think very few people would take a pill that would make them into a psychopath, even if they were happier, because we want to make the world a better place. We want meaning. We want meaning and purpose in ways that are sort of above and beyond happiness and pleasure. We want to make a difference in people's lives. We want to engage in long and difficult projects. One reason why I call my book The Sweet Spot is that for each of us, given all these many motivations, we have to find a compromise, have to find a sort of a proper space between all of this.
I think that I was wondering if you could speak to, I didn't ask you on the live list about sort of the trend of toxic positivity and how your book kind of plays into that.
It pushes against it.
Plays against it.
Exactly. You're right. There's a lot of talk. A lot of people pointed out that psychologists seem to focus almost exclusively on happiness, pleasure, positivity. And I think they're missing something. And in fact, they're missing some fairly ancient wisdom that I think all of the world's religions capture, which is a good life is not merely a matter of, maximizing the number of orgasms or hot fudge sundaes you have. It's a matter of often, in addition to those other things, it's often a matter of living a life you can be proud of, living a life that you can be satisfied by. And when you ask people whose lives are full of meaning, they'll tell you, and these are sort of scientific studies, they will say, my life is also full of difficulty, anxiety, struggle. The most meaningful jobs, for instance, are not the ones that pay the most, nor the ones that are most high status. They're jobs like being a member of the clergy, being a social worker, being an educator. And those are difficult jobs, but they're difficult jobs involving struggle, sometimes conflict, that make a difference. And so meaning pushes you in a different way than happiness. And I think too many psychologists and too many people ignore that.
Why do you think we as humans crave meaning?
That's a really good question. I think some of it may be cultural. Cultural, there's sort of a notion that of long-term goals one should aspire to, and different cultures have different ideas what these goals are. Some of them really valorize child rearing as a meaningful goal, others much less so. But I also think some of it is built into us. I think that distinct from other animals, sort of for Darwinian reasons, we want to do things that make a difference, that impress the group, that show off our value in a community of people, because we're very status oriented. So I think, unlike pleasure, which could be fairly hardwired, fairly built in and largely shared with other creatures, the appetite for meaning is something that distinguishes humans and has a source both sort of evolutionary and also cultural.
Oh no, that was a really good answer, and also a way of saying, I don't know. You don't know.
The best answer is also saying, I don't know. Fair, you have caught me. Whenever somebody says it's a combination of evolution and culture, yeah, it's kind of like saying, I don't know.
I mean, I think it's crazy how much I really want certitude and answers, when I know that it's just, I don't think it's going to be within my lifetime.
I
if
think
ever.
I'm a fan of psychology, and I think we have answers to certain questions. We could talk about things which I think we know. When it comes to the question of what do people want and what satisfies them and what makes for a good life, if somebody tells you they know all answers, run the other way. And so I'm just trying to present some ideas.
Oh no, I think we mentioned this earlier or I mentioned this earlier in when we spoke about how for all my life, I really desired to be a good person, and to have competing sort of motivations in what to do was really confusing, or how to be a good person. And I think the idea of motivational pluralism is actually really helpful in accepting that that humans are complicated, and that there could be different motivations.
It's a way of acknowledging the problem. You're really happy at home. You have a good book in front of you and a glass of wine. You're feeling really good, but there's a sick friend you should visit, and you know it's going to be a long trip. And you know it won't be much fun. And now you have sort of that's the right thing to do, but now there's a pleasurable thing to do. And there's no simple answer. It's not like always do the right thing. People are complicated. Sometimes pleasure could override morality. I think sometimes meaning could override morality. So that's what we wrestle with.
I was wondering if you could talk about the ones that, or when the idea or the simulation that you could choose to enter into a life that was just a simulation that was pure happiness and joy, what you would choose.
It's a wonderful example. It's just sketched out just a bit by the philosopher Robert Nozick, and he says, yeah, imagine an experience machine. So that you plug into the machine. It's like the Matrix, only much better. You plug into the machine, and for the rest of your natural life, you're just going to be lying on a table until your body dies a natural death. But you will live a life, an imagined life of accomplishment and joy and pleasure and success far beyond your wildest dreams. And you will never know for a second it wasn't real. Your memory of choosing the machine gets blotted out. And so the question is, would you do it? And I'll tell you, I've asked a lot of people this. I teach these classes, and answers vary. But I wouldn't do it, because I want to do things. I don't want to just get the feeling of doing things. I have people in this world I love, and I don't want to abandon them. Even if I wouldn't know I abandoned them, I still don't want to abandon them. And to the extent you say, wow, there's a bit of a problem plugging into the machine, or to take a more realistic example, living the rest of your life on some incredibly high quality heroin that just gives you totally buzzed. You say that's not a good life. That means you're also a motivational pluralist. It means you also see other things that should be maximized.
Is there sort of, I don't know if I can't remember, I'm a little bit foggy these days. Is there a sort of a generational difference between people who would choose the simulation and people who would choose to stay in the present?
It's a good question. I don't know of any systematic data from it. I know when I've asked the question to people recently, a lot of people say I did go into the machine. And maybe that's because young people today are more hedonistic. Maybe it's because of COVID, which makes many of us want to escape our lives. But yeah, there are definitely individual differences. And I got to say, to the extent that you say, oh, don't plug me into the machine, I will live a full life. that's because I'm living a pretty good life now. If I was in a prison, or if I was suffering from terrible pain or whatever, I might say, hey, plug me in.
Mhm.
So I'm not denying that pleasure has its lures.
It's weird that when you talked about that, it really sort of elicited a really emotional response. I think during the pandemic, especially when I've been really sad and hopeless and sort of felt like, the things are stacked against me. Um, Surviving for the people I've loved or the people I love, I think is a real sort of beautiful motivation, or having that sort of desire
Yes.
to stick it out with them is like a very fundamental source of meaning for me, that I would know that I was letting go of, which I think is kind of disappointing or pointless, I guess.
It's a beautiful way to put it. One of my subtitle of the book is "The Pleasures of Suffering: A Search for Meaning." A search for meaning is a shout out to Viktor Frankl's book "Man's Search for Meaning," and he talks about his experience in the Holocaust and talks about what people will survive the concentration camps and what people decide to kill themselves or just give up. He says the solution is meaning. That the people who make it through don't give up, often have some sort of broader purpose or broader connection, often to family or to loved ones that keep them going. And this isn't the Holocaust, but any difficult time, I think, has a similar moral, which is the thing to hold on to often is what you're describing very well, which is things that matter, not day-to-day pleasures, but things that matter, deeper things like the people you love.
Well, Paul, thank you so much for talking about your book. We'll talk about it again just at the end, but I want to be respectful of your time and ask you what this it's not really a podcast, this video cast is called Bad at Keeping Secrets. And so I ask everybody if you would be willing to share a secret.
I had a secret I was going to tell you. This was very boring, and I told it to you before. But then we had a conversation, so I'm going to tell you a different secret. Just
okay,
you can we'll edit it. We'll edit it out if it's too terrible.
I don't know how to do that, Paul. So you're just going to have to take the risk.
Okay, fair enough. Thanks for that. We talked, and you argued that some of my claims are controversial, and then you said my last book is called Against Empathy: The Case for Rational Compassion, where I really do say a lot of how we think about goodness is mistaken. And you asked me very nicely, are you a contrarian? And in some way in my work, I am. I push back on things and so on. But the secret is, I'm almost embarrassed to say that, is that I'm actually very uncomfortable with conflict in everyday life. I really like to talk about ideas, but I like kind of people, I like in a friendly, open way, and acrimonious debates, people screaming at each other, people dunking on each other. I have no stomach for it. And
what do you think that says about your core identity? That these sort of disagreements can exist in this particular realm, but not in this sort of more serious, sort of violent realm, or not, maybe violence is the wrong word, but anger, or that they can exist in the theoretical realm, but not in the sort of actual realm.
So, my partner and I have amazing relationship. We talk about things all the time we disagree about, and I love it. But when it turns personal with anybody, it's just unpleasant, and I want to pull away. And I think for whatever reason, I have a difficult time being hated, and a difficult time hating people. And and I'm not. This isn't really a humble brag. I think sometimes a willingness to jump into the fray and really mix it up with people who are the enemy. I think sometimes this is a good thing, and that's not my strength. My strength is more, I don't know, what we're doing now, talking. You may disagree with me, I could disagree with you, but we don't hate each other, and this is all, and that's my strength. But my secret is that there's a lot of people, I think, who read my book and say, boy, that's a guy who really likes the big fights and everything, and not so much.
So give me an example of what sort of, was that highlighting a moral, or is this, do you find this is a Canadian attribute? I'm sorry to stereotype, and you probably get that all the time.
Okay.
As a non-Canadian, who, yeah, do you find it? Is it, because I mean, I do think that that's you're Canadian, correct?
I am definitely Canadian. I was born in Montreal.
Okay, I'm definitely not Canadian, to my knowledge. And I think for me, I'm uncomfortable, like to think about why I'm uncomfortable with conflict is, I think I take it back to like culture and gender and
Yeah.
expectations. But I'm also like genuinely, I'm just like not that interested in it. But I do like to argue a lot.
Yeah. Wow, I never thought of it. A guy could be Canadian. Canadians, of course, are notoriously polite.
Sorry. I mean, sorry for making that stereotype, but sometimes there's a kernel. I find that there's
I
a
thought when you said
kernel
sorry,
of truth.
I thought when you said sorry, you're making fun of the Canadians. You could always go, sorry. We're a very apologetic group. Maybe it is my my Canadian blood coursing in me. It's also, I realized when I was a teenager, when I was in graduate student, I would argue about everything. And I had a certain style. I went to graduate school at MIT, which had a very belligerent style. And I had a style which people told me later was very belligerent and aggressive. And I'd say, oh, thank you. Good. That's what I want to be. I want to be, and a lot of the people I admired, scholars I admired, were very, very argumentative, very, take no prisoners, humiliate the other person, push your point, see what happens. And I've just grown tired of it. I've grown tired of it personally. I've grown a bit tired of it as a way of ascertaining the truth as good scientific practice. I like people who hold strong and interesting views, but the sort of treating intellectual disagreement as if we're two armies meeting across the field and one must win and one must lose, I think just is not actually a good way of getting at the truth. So maybe thinking about this the way I am now, my secret is a new secret. I hadn't always been this way.
Ooh, people change.
Yeah, people change.
I just wanted to add, I don't think for me in my life, it's been an effective strategy to actually win people over or to change their mind, or to have an effect, a thoughtful effect, a deep effect, an effect that is thoughtful and meaningful.
Yeah, I agree. So we've come at it from different ways, but we're both in the same place, I think.
I'm really sorry about this beeping. My computer won't shut up. But anyway, I just want to talk one more time about this amazing book that doesn't give you any answers, but it's very thought-provoking and explorative and why we are the way we are, what at this point drives us to keep going. And I think for me, and I won't speak for other people, I think I need that. I need an argument to keep going and to understand why and the motivations behind that is really insightful. So thank you, Paul, so much for your work. And thank you so much for your time today.
This was terrific. Thanks for having me on. Let's do this again sometime. Talk about empathy.
Okay. Anytime. Take care.
Okay. Take care.
Bye.